starting here on my left. We've got Alex Davies-Jones, MP, Shadow Tech Minister and Chair of the Coalfield Communities APPG, and she's been the MP for Pontypridd since 2019. To my right, we've got Paul O'Kane, Member of the Scottish Parliament, Scottish Labour's Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice, Social Security and Equalities since 2023, and MSP for West of Scotland since 2021. And at the end here, we've got Oliver Coppard, the Mayor of South Yorkshire since May 2022. I know Oliver for a long time because he's a good friend to Coalfields. I used to work in the Dearne Valley in South Yorkshire, where I used to have an office. And yeah, so we've got a very good panel here this evening. Oliver has to leave at 6 o'clock, so I will let him have a word just before he has to dash off to another event. So what we've got, I'm going to ask a few questions of the panellists, and we're going to kick off with the first one, and I'm going to direct it first of all to Alex, because one of the ideas is, as Lisa mentioned, about creating wealth in communities, and of course the job market's changing, technology's changing, and so the first question we wanted to discuss is how can we ensure that as the job market changes and we've got AI and robotics, that this is an opportunity and not a threat for our coalfields. And maybe, I'm sure you've been looking at this. And you can say anything about the APPG as well.
I hope so. I'm
and then
proud
I'll
of
pass on to Paul and Oliver.
Good, thanks Linda. Hello everybody, Pranamda, thank you for coming this afternoon. This is probably my favourite event at conference. I'm going to put that out there now. Not just because it blends all of my personal loves together. It's my shadow brief as Shadow Tech Minister. I represent the Coalfield community and I'm very proud to do so. And I chair in Parliament, as Linda mentioned, the all-party parliamentary group for Coalfield community. So this is the perfect event. And what this is about is making levelling up truly mean something. I think Lisa outlined it. It's about how we make sure that our coalfields across our nations and regions are properly represented and levelled up. As I said, I represent a former coalfield community. I don't want to keep calling it that in the next 30 years. I want it to be known for something else. I want to protect our heritage and history, but I want us to have that wealth, economic prosperity, job creation, proper opportunities that we should have had that we've been denied for far too long. And I think we've got it there in abundance. It just needs a bit of political will and a bit of direction to do so. We've got this infrastructure. For those of you who've seen our flagship report that the All-Party Parliamentary Group created, it shows that our coalfields are a bed of potential. We have got the existing infrastructure, whether that's mine water heating, geothermal technology. We can have the jobs of the future in these areas. We've got an incredible skills workforce ready to tap into. And I don't want AI to be a threat to jobs and automation. Of course, we know that AI is going to replace some jobs of the future. That is just the transition from industrial revolutions throughout centuries. That is something that's going to happen. But there are also jobs to be created. And we've already mentioned the apprenticeship levy being transformed. That's definitely something that's going to be happening under a Labour government, so that we've got those skills and we can use those in existing jobs, but also that our curriculum is fit for purpose for the future as well, in areas where it needs to be done. And we have this in abundance. Our report sets this out, but it's definitely there for the taking.
Okay, thanks very much. Paul.
Thank you very much, and it's a huge honour for me to be at this packed fringe for the first time and to be representing the Scottish Labour Party and Scotland. I'm very proud to be an MSP who represents a coalfield community in Ayrshire as part of my region and see every day, much like all the other panellists, the real rich vibrancy of what's happening in those communities. I also bring greetings, having just spent 6 months in the Lanarkshire coalfield in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. Michael Shanks' candidate aid. On polling day, the Blantyre Miners' Welfare was our hub, and what a hub that was. But during the week, that's a great place that's really at the forefront of bringing communities together with innovative things in childcare, in community groups, and in wider regeneration. So Michael can't be here, but he sends his warm wishes and looks forward to meeting the Coalfield Regeneration Trust in Parliament. But I think in terms of the question and looking at how do we prepare, if you like, for the advent of new technology in our communities, I think really for me it's fundamentally about making sure that we engage properly with communities and with people who have worked for many years in different jobs, coming out of obviously the challenges that have existed since the closure of coal mines. And I think AI to all of us, I think, is quite frightening and quite concerning. I think we've seen that in this week in particular in a really acute way. So I think it's about saying to communities, how can we harness some of these new technologies and bring them into what we're doing? And for me, that's about meeting people where they are and going out and seeing where they could have the most benefit. And I think across Scotland, what we're not doing at the moment is actually thinking about the skills agenda linked to that. So what we're seeing, I think, is a dearth of investment in a skills agenda that helps young people to begin to think about the jobs of the future. So for me, the Scottish Government has to do a whole lot more in that space, but I think we as Labour need to ensure that our offer is always really firmly rooted in skills and in that kind of community consultation and community understanding of what it is that people want to get out of these new technologies.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Oliver.
Thank you. Can people hear me if I speak like this? So I'm going to trump everybody else in the panel because I don't just represent one Coalfield community, I represent so I win, I think, on that basis. Look, I want to speak a bit about hope and opportunities, but also the challenges that we face. And so when I think about hope, for me that looks like the regeneration that we've been able to bring to places like what was Orgreave. Because if you go to what was Orgreave now, the place of the biggest and worst industrial dispute, the case of significant excess from the police and the government, what you see there now is the world's most advanced manufacturing facilities. And I don't say that in some sort of exaggerated way. They are genuinely the world's most advanced manufacturing facilities. It is the world's first advanced manufacturing district. I'm off to the States, St Louis next week, to talk to them about how they can copy the work that we've done in South Yorkshire to develop their own tech sector and advanced manufacturing sector. And we have developed that over the course of the last 25 years through persistence, funding, support, and a single vision for what that community could be. Now that is a hopeful vision, because if you go there, you see the buildings rising from Orgreave that weren't there, the housing, the supermarkets, the jobs that are on offer, but there are not enough jobs on offer because the types of industries that we have there aren't creating the sorts of jobs that we once had. So whilst we have the foundation of what could be something great for the rest of South Yorkshire, and there are huge opportunities to do that in places like the Dearne Valley. As Linda said, I used to run something called the Dearne Valley Ecovision, which was a ambitious project, started in 2008, possibly the worst time in history to start a local government funded project, but we did it anyway, which was designed to try and turn the Dearne Valley, once the most polluted place in Western Europe, into the most sustainable community of its kind in the country. So I do think that if you have that ambitious type of vision, then working with partners, with the right partners, a partner in government who actually genuinely want to invest in communities like South Yorkshire, then there is nothing that we can't do. The challenges that we've faced have been since 2008 because of the financial crash, but then more significantly because of 2010 and austerity, and quite frankly the lack of funding that has resulted from us leaving Europe. And South Yorkshire, as many of you will know, including Mick at the back of the room now, who's standing there quietly, will know, Objective 1 funding was one of the big routes that we managed to support those communities and get them back on their feet, alongside funding from the Labour government. So if we can get new bits of funding into South Yorkshire, if we can work collectively with a clear vision for what those communities can be, what our communities can be, then there is nothing we can't do. So I am hugely optimistic about working with the Labour government to deliver on those promises, because we've done it before, and I'm absolutely sure that we can do it again.
Okay. So Oliver, you mentioned sustainability, and this afternoon at conference I know that the main debate's been all about the net zero agenda and bringing new jobs. I don't know if anything to add to what you said before about
I do.
About renewable energy, etc.
I talk about this a lot, right? Because one thing I'm sort of incredibly conscious of as we go through this debate around net zero. One, I'm deeply committed to a net zero vision by 2040. Right? I don't think we're in Liverpool. It's October. Yes, there was a jumper. That was a bad decision. I lost half my body weight in sweat because it's like 22 degrees in October in Liverpool, right? Global warming is real. I don't think any of us doubt that. But what we also can't doubt is the fear that resides in all too many people in our communities, because we have been on the fuzzy end of this lollipop before, right? We've been through an energy transition and we lost out.
Yeah.
Our communities lost out. We're the people that paid the price for an energy transition. And in places like the Netherlands, where not a single mine worker lost their job when they transitioned, in our communities, everybody was thrown on the scrapping.
Yeah.
And we can't allow that to happen again. And yet I have absolutely all the sympathy in the world with those people who see what's about to come down the tracks and say, we don't want to be the ones paying the price. Why should it fall on our shoulders? So look, again, I will hold the Labour government to account. Lisa's just given me permission, so I'm happy to do it. And because the Labour government, I am sure, will not do that to our communities. They will absolutely respect the need to invest in places like South Yorkshire, places like the Dearne Valley, so that we can actually move to net zero by actually not just focusing on the challenges, but the opportunities, because the opportunities are huge. The opportunities for a place like South Yorkshire, with the history and heritage that we have, the understanding of how to be at the forefront of industrial change, right? We created the Industrial Revolution in South Yorkshire, we powered the Industrial Revolution in South Yorkshire, and I've got no doubt we can power the next Industrial Revolution if we get given that opportunity. So it's a huge opportunity, so let's focus on the opportunity, let's get a Labour government to support us in moving forward, and let's recognise and respect those people who are slightly worried about the fact that last time out we lost out and we can't see that again.
Thanks. And so, Alex, I mean, you're working on technology. How can we make sure that the coalfields aren't left behind when we talk about the Labour's green, the Labour's green prosperity plan?
Yeah, they absolutely have to be front and central when it comes to it. I think we've already outlined that in terms of the opportunities at scale that are there in terms of bringing them with us. And I see our former coalfield and industrialised areas as being central to that. It has to be. And let's be real when we talk about skills and opportunities. Not everybody is going to be a coder. We don't want everybody to be a coder. If you want to go in and do code, fantastic. But there are opportunities in the tech sector and the digital world for everybody. I was recently in Leeds, in looking at some of the incredible opportunities they're doing with retail. They're not cutting jobs through automation, actually creating jobs. Some of the retail outputs are having to increase their employment opportunities because of tech and because of the amount of people coming forward and wanting to use these technologies. And these are former retail workers who are stacking shelves, quite low-skilled jobs, now operating proper digital technology, using these skills that they're learning, being higher paid for it, and they're recruiting more jobs in this sector. So there are swathes of opportunities here, and it's not just at that high level that everybody's going to be, in deep fake AI generation or in coding. There are opportunities at the breadth for everybody, and we want to make sure that it reaches everybody.
Paul?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we're excited in Scotland about the Green British Energy being headquartered in Scotland, and I think we certainly want to take on South Yorkshire in terms of how we drive forward the next green industrial revolution. But I think it is about how do we ensure the coalfields aren't lost and left behind in that story, and they actually see the benefits of the work that the next Labour government is going to do in terms of having that revolution in jobs and in opportunities. I think for me as well, thinking about the points that we've heard tonight from Lisa and from Alex around the opportunities for young people in particular, and we know the stark statistics around the real demographic challenges there are in our communities. I think what we need to do is start, we talked a lot about investment in college places and further education, but actually it's more fundamental than that. We need to be starting in primary schools in the really early stages of getting young people to think about new skills and new jobs and the jobs of the future. And for me, actually, we've seen in Scotland a decimation, actually, of that further and higher education system and the funding that's available to help young people into these sorts of jobs. Because Alex's point is right, not everyone's going to be a coder. But actually, where are all the opportunities and the options for young people to think about the different sorts of roles they can take on and the different sorts of jobs that they could do? So for me, we need to absolutely get that bit right. And I guess that's true for England and Wales as much as it is for Scotland as well, and how we drive that forward.
On that point as well, though, it's about making sure that we don't lose those skills then from our areas. For far too long, our areas have suffered from a brain drain where we have got great, curriculums, particularly in Wales, where we've tried to change it and boost it up, but then we lose that talent and they move away to big cities or they move away to other countries. So we need to make sure we've got those jobs and opportunities close to home so they don't have to leave, so they can work where they live, where they're from, to build that local economy, to grow that circular economy, and that's something that we really need to do.
Yeah.
So you've all talked about how the changing economy that's coming, the opportunities that are there, but what do you need? What kind of devolved powers would you need to make this happen? Labour government. I mean, Oliver, you're a mayor, and those mayors working together, but what do you think a Labour government should devolve to you as a mayor to enable you to deliver to this?
How long have we got, did you say? Look, I'm increasingly confident in our devolution agenda and our devolution offer. We've been working closely since Sue Gray came in to talk about how we're actually going to put that into practice, and it feels to me like there's a real kind of moment for mayors to kind of take control of some of this and actually deliver for our communities, because as Lisa said, our communities know the answer to these questions better than anybody else, right? So let's put decisions closer to people and through that make better decisions. Some of the things that I'm particularly keen to see come under my remit, well, certainly buses. You see what Andy Burnham has done in Greater Manchester with the B network. We're advancing faster than anybody in the country towards franchising. I think that is only a good thing. In places like South Yorkshire, the bus network has been cut by 40% over the last decade alone, and you cannot hope to have opportunity to stay near and go far if you do not have things as simple as a bus network. So certainly public transport, control of public transport, the Labour government could certainly help me to do that faster and go further. When it comes to things like the skills agenda, I have some control over the skills agenda at the moment. We're working with partners like the WEA, proudly, but we are also not able to do some of the things I would like to be able to do around skills, because I don't have the flexibilities even if I've got the funding. So kind of skills is a big part of this agenda, because I'd like to be able to come into places in South Yorkshire and create a skill system which matches up with our industrial ambitions, and at the moment I'm not quite able to do some of that. But that last point is, I think, where I want to put most emphasis, because having a regional industrial strategy which is linked to a spatial strategy, and there is something in there about planning and whether or not mayors have the ability like Sadiq does, and we all have slightly different powers, but like the Avengers, but like Sadiq has different powers to me, and I'm not able to do some of the work that he's on a sort of spatial plan. So giving mayors the ability to do that and marrying up an industrial strategy with a skill strategy and a spatial strategy would allow us, I think, to put some real heft behind that growth strategy that we want. So in South Yorkshire, inevitably that would focus on things like energy, that would focus on advanced manufacturing, on a digital and tech sector. Barnsley's got one of the fastest growing digital sectors in the whole country. So if we can coalesce all of that around that growth plan, then I think we can just absolutely fly.
Okay, Paul, the situation in Scotland is different, of course, different devolution issues. Is there anything you've got a request of the Labour government?
Well, look, I think like Oliver, seeing real confidence in the plan and in the progress of what we will do in government to ensure that all of our nations and regions are strengthened, that decisions are taken as close to people as possible. I think the frustration on my part is that in Scotland at the moment we have an SNP government who are interested in huge centralisation, who don't want to pass power down into communities, and who don't fundamentally have a good relationship with the UK government, because they're more interested in the grudge and grievance of their constitutional position than in actually trying to make things work in the interests of people who live in the communities that we're talking about this evening. So I think with a UK Labour government, we have a chance for a really grown-up relationship. We will be the adults in the room. We will push the Scottish government to come to the table and to do more. And then I think because of the beginnings, if you like, of our political recovery in Scotland, we really now have an opportunity to look forward to a potential future Scottish Labour government, of which I hope to play a part, which can actually see the investment that needs to be made both through the power of our UK economy and the redistribution of wealth to all parts of the UK, but also takes decisions that are in the interests of the communities across the coalfields. Now, just in the last few days, the Scottish Government, the SNP Government, have decided to cut funding to the Coalfield Regeneration Trust, to the Community Grants Programme by 100,000. There just doesn't seem to be any kind of understanding about the impacts that those sorts of decisions have on communities. So for me, fundamentally, it's less of a conversation about why can we not have more powers, which is the kind of grudge and grievance stuff you got, but it's actually saying the powers that we have, which are huge. We're a very powerful devolved parliament in a European and world context. How are we using those powers? How are we driving them down into communities? And taking away money that fundamentally goes out into communities and funds those sorts of great projects like I was talking about in Blantyre, taking that away and cutting it, that is not helping communities to make decisions about what they want and what they want to see.
Okay, cool. Alex, yeah. You can get around it. Alex, you might be part of that government, so
it's all of that in terms of, I've had the benefit, right, of living under a devolved government since 1999, and a Labour government at that too. So I've seen the difference that it can make to people. I've seen the transformation that it can happen when you work in true partnership with organisations like the Coalfield Regeneration Trust, where you put those communities first and you try and do as much as you can, even with limited resources coming from a Conservative government in Westminster. I just imagine what we can do when you're working hand in hand and we're working with that political will across the country to truly level up, to truly give it meaning. I think one of the things that's really transformative that can be done, and I know Andrew Burnham's working on this, I know Tracy Brabin's working on this in terms of digital inclusion. How can we get our communities online if they can't even get online? It's 2 million people in this country still do not have access to reliable internet, and that stark is even more huge when you look at the north-south divide. So it's about making sure that that is accessible. How can we give that power to you to actually do the job properly rather than doing it from central government who doesn't have an idea of how it should work in local communities? How do we make sure that digital inclusion involves skills, involves those devices, access to devices? We saw how difficult it was during COVID when our kids tried to learn from home and they didn't have access to even devices to be able to do that. That divide is stark. So we can talk all we like about as well the high-level jobs, but if our communities can't even get online, then they're already working from a backward step. So that's a huge thing that we need to solve and we need to get right.
Okay, thank you, panel.